Thank y'all for being here. Thank y'all for waiting so long. I really appreciate it. My name is Anthony Modesto Milian. I'm a content creator on both Instagram and TikTok. And on the surface, that's essentially who I am. If I asked you all the same question, you'd probably tell me something similar. You'd say, I'm a mom, you're a dad, you're a husband, you're whatever. You might even tell me where you work. And if you get deep enough, you might tell me your political views. I'm a Republican. I'm a Democrat. But I'd like us to take a step back and look at who we are culturally. What are some things that we have to navigate through life based on how we were raised? What are some lies that we were told based on essentially how we were raised, and how are we just deconstructing the lies that we were told? So recently, my father passed away. He was a military man. When he was 18 years old, right after high school, right after he graduated, he walked into a recruiter's office and he decided to join the Marines. He did it for two reasons. His four brothers did it. That's one. He did it for three, actually. His brothers did it. He wanted to get a nice tan, and he wanted to travel the world like his brothers. He always told me when his brothers came back home, they had nice tans, and they got to see beautiful places. Unfortunately for him, this little thing happened called Vietnam. And by the time he was done with basic training, he was in the jungle of Southeast Asia. And that's essentially who he was. And he ended up being an MIA, and serving this country for almost 40 years. His death was very sudden. He said he was feeling nauseous. He had a headache. He went to take a nap and never woke up. And so after his death, I went on my own journey. I wanted to find out more about culture, him, where he came from, who he was, and who my people were, quote unquote. And so I ended up going to Puerto Rico. Most of my family that's still living is from this tiny little island called Puerto Rico. You can go from one end to the other in 4 hours. If I'm driving, 2. Okay? So the main lie that a lot of people have been told is that this island contributes nothing to the United States. It's just there. It's a figure. It's a military base. You make good food if you go to a Puerto Rican restaurant. But we know that that's a lie. But one of the things that we have to do is that we have to step back and we have to look at Black history as a whole. And that's something that I had to do when discovering the people that I'm going to tell you about. Because when you look at Black history as a whole, you see these people, sprinkles of Puerto Rican people, everywhere that helped this country be great. First man that I was able to find was this man. His name was Arturo Schomburg. He was a Black man from Puerto Rico. Growing up, the Catholic Church nuns told him that Black people had no heroes, they had no history, they had no advancements, and they had no accomplishments. And this is before Google, where you could Google things. But he set his entire adult life to prove those Catholic nuns wrong. He ended up moving to New York City, and he ended up teaching Spanish. And while he was teaching Spanish, he was collecting artwork from the African diaspora, African American artwork, Caribbean artwork, and also African artwork itself. Also, while he was teaching Spanish, he began writing. He began writing about the achievements and the advancements of African American and Caribbean and African people, the entire diaspora. Again, this was all in a way to prove the Catholic nuns and the people wrong about the accomplishments of people of color. By the time this man died, he had an entire museum full of stuff. During his life, he was asked to be the editor of an encyclopedia, and also invited by multiple historically Black colleges to curate their libraries, their literacy, and their English programs. When he died, his estate was approached by a library system. And they said, we want to buy this. Now, this is in 1930. So for $10,000, they bought his entire collection of artwork, literature, writings, recordings. And in today's dollars, that's the equivalent of $170,000 to $200,000. And this is one man on my journey, on my self journey of learning more about culture and my people. And I said, this can't be it. There has to be more. And today we have the Schomburg Center in Harlem, New York, because of this man and his work. While I was doing my journey and my journey of discovery, I was able to find another man. This man, James Europe. Now, he's not Puerto Rican, but he was an African-American conductor. And during World War I, Puerto Rican people became citizens, and they were eligible for the draft. And James Europe, he needed musicians in the band during World War I. And they had to fit 3 criteria. The first one was that they had to be proficient at music, obviously. The second one was that they had to be American citizens. The third one, because of segregation laws, they couldn't be white. So he went to this tiny little island called, there you go. And he was able to come up with a group that many of you probably know, the Harlem Hellfighters. Almost half of the men that are pictured here were of Puerto Rican descent. And I say all that to say this. As people of color, we're often told that our stories are secondary or they don't matter. But it's really important that we take a step back and look at the big picture of the representation that we want. At the end of the day, none of us really know how long we're going to be on this earth. My dad planned on and lived a life as if he was going to be 100 years, he was going to pass at 100 years old. He ended up dying at 76. And we really have to learn the history of our people so that when the lies are told to us about our cultures, we can point at people and say, this is who represents me. That's who represents me. And regardless of how long we think we're going to live, one day we're all going to be history. And the generations that come after us need to be able to point to us and say, that's who represents me. Thank you guys so much.